Okay, so we can get back to it. I was curious for the Royal We album. How many songs are basically written by 24-year-old Shane, and how many are new? Are there any new songs at all?
No, they all had varying degrees of, some of them were like a 59-second demo that I like turned into a full song. Some of them were like pretty much fully written, like the Snake Eye is pretty much exactly lyrically, melodically, structure wise, like pretty much exactly what I had written in like 2006 or whatever. And I'm Over It too is like pretty much, the same, but pretty much all the other ones had a lot of little, like I Can Quit at Any Time was like a 59-second demo that I had found that I was like, oh, I really love the idea there, but I'd never done anything more with it, and so some of them, had a lot more work. But and then some of them, it's just a matter of like, fine tuning some lyrics or whatever, like Wake Up the Sun had some different lyrics, but it was essentially the same structure and melody and stuff. But, so each one of them had kind of an individual journey, but they all date back to, like The Gambler dates back to like before Suburbiac, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I Can Quit at Any Time, I think was also that same period, like Suburbiac or possibly even before maybe. But then, we don't have to go through every song, but yeah, somewhere between 2002 and 2006, kind of, they were all written or whatever. So, or started, so, they went through a lot. Even the ones that were like kind of more or less done being written, like still had to go through a lot, just like arrangement wise, and like kind of figuring out how to, present them sonically or whatever.
I do think, I think it would be interesting to see, sort of behind the scenes of the album and hear the, 60-second clip or whatever it is, demo song. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. Like little bonus tracks or something.
Yeah.
Maybe on the 20th anniversary of the Royal We will do that.
Wow. So we have to wait 20 years.
No, I don't know. Some of these actually were, I did a very limited, like, I think it was only like up for like 2 months, but I did a series called Dolour Archives that I put up on Bandcamp like about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And that was just the very beginning of trying to figure out what to do with these songs. And so a lot of these, not all of them, but a lot of these were available for a second out there. But
nice.
But yeah, maybe now that this is actually out, it could be cool to maybe something through Bandcamp or something, like the Royal We demos or something, but
you can put them on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just want everything on YouTube.
I love YouTube.
Yeah. I love it. All right. We'll just put it on YouTube.
Just put it on YouTube. Who cares?
Yeah.
What about do people? Sorry, I can hear her growling. Lotus, come here. Come on. Yeah, are people aware, or how much cross marketing do you do with your Elvis podcast, for example? Because that was also something that I had no idea that you were involved with until maybe a week ago.
Yeah, I haven't. There hasn't been a whole lot of cross. I mean, it is an odd thing, like you were saying with my different music accounts and stuff. Like, it is hard to feel like when you're like cross promoting stuff, like that you're like wearing people out on one thing or another. So I haven't really found the right balance on that. I'll usually put something like in my Instagram story about a new episode or something like that. But part of the reason we created the Elvis podcast was because so many of our friends don't like Elvis and we think that they should. So it's honestly like whenever I make a post about it, I'm like, okay, most people fucking hate Elvis and don't want to see anything new about an Elvis podcast, But
well, I had a realization just now, because it almost sounds like your sort of rationale and passion for the Elvis podcast reminds me a lot of why you started Dolour. right? It's sort of like to prove, not prove, but like, you know, prove people wrong. Not quite, but
yeah. I mean, I think like from a really young age, I was just into stuff that other kids weren't. Like I was super into Mozart as like a 6 and 7-year-old. And I got like obsessed with the Titanic, you know, like 15 years before that movie came out. Just like as a little kid, I was just like reading every book about the Titanic. And then when I got into Elvis too, it was like I had no friends that liked Elvis, but I just loved him and got so much out of it. And so from a pretty young age, I was into like sort of just doing my own thing and not worrying about, I guess, what was cool or what wasn't cool, or, you know. So I think, yeah, that probably has carried into just sort of how I approach music and not getting hung up on clicks or, you know, music scenes or whatever, and just, you know, following my own path or whatever, you know. But I mean, generally speaking, most of the things I love are like beloved things. I mean, Elvis is one of the biggest artists ever, you know, but it's always things that maybe are like at the wrong time to be into it or something, you know. But so yeah, that is interesting. That probably does, you know, play into it. And I just feel like, you know, getting into Elvis as a young kid, it kind of exposed me to the history of rock music in a way that a lot of my friends knew Nirvana or Green Day or Weezer or whatever, but didn't necessarily know like where it all kind of like came from or started, or you know, the roots before Elvis and after and all that stuff. And so I feel like going into being a songwriter at 14, 15, 16, like I already had so much like, I already had dug into so much like music history, you know, just because I was interested in it, you know, that even to this day, sometimes, you know, I'll play with different musicians that don't have reference points, you know, further back than like 1994 or something. And I'm just like, you know, it's just interesting, you know, because I was just always fascinated with where things came from and how did we get to where we are, and like, how does this connect? I mean, I really went with, you know, it was like 4th grade Elvis, 5th grade, the Beatles, 6th grade Nirvana. And like, I could like draw a through line, you know, through all those artists and like see that connection, you know, between them all, you know, and like, and kind of understand like where it, or at least in my mind, kind of how it all connected, you know. I didn't meet that many other people that had that sort of interest in the history of it, or, you know.
That is so interesting. I want to hear the Shane Tutmark analysis of music evolution from Elvis to the Beatles to Nirvana. I think that would be fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I want to do if we can make it to a second season of the Elvis podcast, because this first season has just been like breaking down our favorite albums. But the episode, spoiler alert, the first episode I want to do for season 2 is really an Elvis and Beatles episode. And I would love, like, my co-host is not a Nirvana fan, but I would love to do an Elvis and Kurt Cobain one too, because I think that's even more of an odd pair that people wouldn't think. There's so many parallels between those two guys that I think would be interesting, possibly, you know, to fans of either one or both to sort of dig into, you know. But
can you give us a couple off the top of your head, couple parallels?
Elvis and Kurt? Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, they have the same life story. You know, I mean, they both grew up sort of humble beginnings, you know, Kurt in Aberdeen and Elvis in Tupelo, Mississippi. They both, you know, had problems with their dads. You know, like Elvis's dad went to jail briefly when he was a little kid and was like more or less raised by his mom and always remained close to his mom. And Kurt, similar, his parents got divorced and he mostly lived with his mom, but kind of got bummed around with relatives and stuff as well. And, you know, they both, you know, by their early 20s were like the premier artists of their genre, you know. Mm-hmm. And they both kind of got all this sort of like almost spiritual, like hero worship, you know, put on them, whether they cultivated that or not, you know, it's hard to say. But, you know, it's like, it's almost like, you know, Nirvana's career was so short, you know, it's like when Elvis went to the army, in 58, you know, it's sort of like if Elvis's career had ended right then, which a lot of people kind of look at like 50s Elvis as like the only Elvis that matters. And like, that's kind of, to me, like if Elvis would have like say died in the army, it would have been like kind of the same legacy as Nirvana as far as just that. I mean, Elvis still died young at 42, but he had such a longer, you know, he had like 20 years in the spotlight versus Kurt's like 4 years or whatever it was, you know, 3 years. But even like weird stuff like some of Nirvana's earlier tours, Kurt had taken this big blown up picture of Elvis and put Alice Cooper makeup on him, and it said Nirvana over it. And so they were bringing this big Elvis poster with them at every show they played on, like in like 1989, 90 era. And then there's like a random weird interview with Kurt's early girlfriend. I think it was Tracy, that he wrote like about a girl about. And the interviewer asked her, like, you know, did Kurt have any opinions about Elvis or whatever? And she's like, oh, he was really interested in like Graceland and stuff. Wow. Which is just weird. I'd love to know more about that, because you don't hear too many Elvis references like from Kurt or whatever. But I think had Kurt lived longer, I think he would have seen those parallels too. You know, I mean, they both were total kind of pioneers, very American dream life story kind of thing of kind of coming from nothing and turning the whole music world on its head. And so, I mean, I think there's a million kind of things like that, you know, that you could bring up. But even, you know, like Nirvana Unplugged, with him playing like Lead Belly songs, like Elvis would open all his shows with CC Rider in the 70s, which was a Lead Belly song. And so even just musical parallels with, you know, Kurt's interest, I think Kurt would have gone more down a rootsy path had he lived longer, like with the way they were doing Nirvana Unplugged, you know, right towards the end, kind of seemed to be hinting at maybe a rootsier direction. So yeah, there's a little taste.
That is amazing. It's cool how many little facts you can just pull out too. Like, I didn't know when Elvis died. You're like, and he died at 42. And
yeah.
Like, no idea.
Right? Yeah. I'm a total nerd for that stuff. But, you know, I think the thing as a kid, it wasn't so much like hero worship to me. It's like, I'd read books about Elvis, you know, or John Lennon or Kurt Cobain. And it was like people I related to, you know, or people like that I felt like a kinship with, you know, like, not to say that, you know, whatever, that's just the way I felt when I was a kid, you know. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I would love to be like that. It was like, oh, these are like people I relate to, you know. So learning about them kind of has, in a way, like helped me learn about myself, or that's kind of how I look at it, you know, throughout my life. So being, you know, being interested in these, you know, artists or whatever, you know, I've kind of, you know, helped me understand my own path, I guess, or just understand, like, how do you exist on this world when, like, all you want to do is turn into a ball of light, you know?
It's very deep.
We're doing it. You're going to make me cry.
Are you going to cry?
No.
Okay. Yeah, the Elvis stuff is really interesting.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things that I doubt many Dolour fans or whatever would know, but there's like little Elvis references on like every Dolour record. Just because it was like such a part of my DNA. Like, there'd be like a little melody snatch here, or like a little, you know, a little lyric, or, you know, A Billion Odd People has like a very like Viva Las Vegas part to it. Like, well, there's a lot of pretty women waiting out there, and they're all living. It's like, you know, there's 150,000 people better than me. You know, it's like there's things in my head, at least, that I hear, you know. And on the first Dolour album, there's like the You're So Square on Rocker Chicks Dig Us, which is like, there's an Elvis song, You're So Square, Baby, I Don't Care. And, you know, stuff like that. So there's like a gnat in here or something now, but
no worries.
But yeah, almost every Dolour record kind of has a little hidden Elvis thing. So look for those, folks. Find them.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if either someone could track them down or if at some point you could reveal them all.
Yeah. I mean, if there was any interest whatsoever, I would happily do that, but I don't know if anybody cares, but
I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe your Elvis podcast listeners too.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do the deep dive, the secret history of Dolour's Elvis connection.
There you go. Maybe that's just its whole separate podcast.
A whole separate podcast.
A different episode.
36 seasons.
Yeah.
Dropping in 2021. Get ready, folks.
I mean, I sort of like just, pushing these out or just YOLO.
Yeah.
So.
All right. It's coming out in August, folks. Get ready.
Wait, what's coming out in August? Oh, the other podcast?
Yeah.
It could come out, it could come out tomorrow.
Right. All right. I'm into that.
Yeah. I mean, I know I feel like you at this point have an aversion to sort of just like releasing stuff.
I've lived my life so much that's been very destructive for me, and I've been trying to learn that lesson for like over a decade now of just like, nothing was ever fast enough for me, like in the Dolour days. I was just like writing so much and just cranking out so much. And some of the things I've had to try to learn to find more peace in my life is just forcing a slower pace, which, I mean, that being said, I still just go on these crazy hot streaks of just like pure productivity, but I don't beat myself up now if there's like a mellow period, whereas when I was younger, it was just so much of my identity was so wrapped up into like how productive I was being or like, that kind of stuff. And trying to fulfill some sort of, I don't know if that was put on me or if I put that on myself. I think it was probably more just put on myself, but, even, you can hear in the songs like Cheer Up Baby is really about being frustrated about wanting to be in the studio. Like part of the contract I signed for Suburbiac for the label to put that out was that I would have like kind of unlimited access to their studio. And of course that ended up not being the case. And so I was just like, it had been like a couple months since Suburbiac came out. And I was like, dude, I want to get in there. We haven't had anybody in there. And they kept like booking these, I mean, in the song, it's like Creed ripoffs to sign, like whatever. They had these like terrible Creed sounding bands or whatever in there. And I was just super frustrated with wanting to get more studio time and stuff. And so New Old Friends really came out of just like, okay, I'm just going to do it myself because they're not getting me in the studio and whatever. So there's just at every step of the way, there's been, a struggle with, until finally with Solar Twin record and now this new record, having my own home studio, which is where I'm speaking from. You can't see a lot of it, but finally, after all these years, having my own space to, just record whenever I want. And, so that's been a huge aspect of being able to like not have to rely on other people, because I am such a like do it yourself person, but without a studio, I always had to rely on like an engineer or somebody with gear or like whatever, their availability or having enough money to pay them, all that, all those kind of things now don't have to be a concern, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you recorded the whole recent album there in your home studio?
Yep. Yeah. This is where I did most of my vocals right here.
Wow.
So I don't know. You can see the little chair over there, drum set. Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, maybe you should do a studio tour at some point. Okay.
Yeah.
I
mean, there's not a whole lot to see here, but it's basically just a room where I'm able to have my gear stay, and a couple decent microphones. And so it's just exactly what I need. So
nice.
Yeah.
Is this where you record your podcast too?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Sitting right here.
Nice.
Totally. And I had moved in here about halfway through making the Solar Twin record. So I finished the Solar Twin album here.
Nice.
Yeah.
I feel like you were sort of ahead of the curve of you know, a lot of musicians, a lot of artists now are releasing stuff just independently. You know, I think Macklemore was sort of famously like released on it independently, and now more and more people are doing it. And it almost sounds like you were ahead of the curve on that with New Old Friends.
Yeah. So yeah, we put out New Old Friends ourselves first, but then it did get picked up by Made Mexico. But it was just the idea of, I guess, you know, I just had so much music that I needed to make. And if a label couldn't keep up with it, then it was like, get out of my way. You know, I just felt so, it just felt so offensive to me at the time to like not be able to just put out music when you wanted to put out music, you know? And so I love that about this day and age. An artist can drop a song that they wrote last week and just throw it online, and it's like out there, you know? And that like wasn't really an option for many people, or many people didn't realize that it was an option, you know, but being that, you know, if you paid the money to print CDs or whatever, you know, back then, like you could do it, you know, just a lot of people wouldn't do that. You know, they'd be sitting around waiting for a label to do this or that. And, so yeah, I guess it just kind of felt like, well, let's just do this. I guess that's been kind of my motto from the beginning of like, let's just do it. Let's go, you know, get out of my way.
That's awesome. How do you, I mean, it almost seems like you have to have, you almost run it like a business, or like you're just a one-man business, right? Or
yeah, I mean, at this point, I mean, with the Dolour days, I did have people, but I mean, again, I just always felt like people were at such a slower pace than me that it's hard to say how great I was as a client or whatever for them, or vice versa. Cause it was just like, I was just plowing ahead, you know? But yeah, these days, I mean, I just kind of love, you know, even if it means a smaller audience or whatever, I would just so much rather have, you know, control over what I'm putting out there and how I'm presenting it. And like, you know, even if, you know, our videos are super homemade or whatever, our graphic design, I mean, I'm doing all of it. I did the album artwork. I, you know, engineered and mixed the record. And, I mean, doing the job of, you know, what used to have to be like 10 different people, you know?
Right.
So I guess what I like about that though, is like kind of no matter how it, however far it reaches, I guess I'm just like glad that I'm able to like kind of keep it within my own reach and stuff. And it doesn't have a chance to get so out of control as things can when you're not, you know, when you're not calling the shots. It's like you can get in so over your head and not even know how you're being presented or how people are receiving stuff. You know, I don't know. It's important for me, I guess, that people realize that what they're getting is like directly from me, you know, and not some machine or something, you know. But that's the interesting thing, as like indie music has become like a genre. You know, it's like they call like Billie Eilish like indie music or whatever, like Lana Del Rey like indie or alternative, you know. And it's like I don't know many people that are as like independent as I am, you know, with my music. And there almost needs to be a different word for it, because if indie is a genre or whatever, you know, of like major label artists now, you know, it's a weird. I feel like that title needs to be retired. Maybe, I don't know.
That's a good point. Well, I mean, because there are other artists that are like that, right? That sort of do all their own stuff, or maybe they get picked up. But
I mean, you know, it's like there's people like Tame Impala, like where, you know, that dude like produces their records, and I think he plays a lot of the stuff or whatever. But of course they have like, you know, a major label behind them and that whole thing, you know. So it's hard to know how much, you know, bullshit he's having to like deal with on a daily basis, like compromising this or that or whatever, you know. But I'm not opposed to, you know, working with a label or, you know, working with other things, but I would just want to be able to have complete final cut on everything, you know, because that's just, to me, that's like what being an artist is. And like people that are making art by committee, you know, that's just not, you know, ever been my thing. And I want to trust, you know, if I love an artist, that I'm hearing what they want me to hear, or that they want to share, or whatever, you know. So that's how I like to do it.
That's awesome. So, I mean, it sounds like you also have experienced some of that and then figured out a way to overcome it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's just probably in the last handful of years, I've finally been able to just, I mean, really all I needed was a couple, you know, microphones and a decent, you know, computer setup. I mean, I really didn't need a whole lot, but I just had never kind of had, you know, the right space in a house, or, you know, whatever. Like, I mean, really just having my own studio kind of gave me everything I needed to just be able to, you know, make records without any sort of compromises, or without too many cooks in the kitchen, or too many opinions and all that stuff. So
that's all. I mean, and now with the internet and the way that we can distribute things, your song could be heard by anyone connected to the internet.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Billions of people.
Yeah. I've definitely never been one of those people that's super hung up on, you know, things used to be so much better, or like, you know, I'm a huge fan of the communication lines the way they are now. And like, just being able to have more control over all that stuff, I think is a great thing for artists, you know, and people that are hung up on, you know, the old industry, or like, or old gear, or, you know, vinyl purists, or any of those sort of like purist people. I've just never been one of those people. I'm always like, there's something better around the corner, you know. Let's embrace what we have. And I feel like all the great artists of all time, you know, it's not like the Beatles were like, hey, let's get that, like, you know, 1910 sound on our guitars. You know, they were like looking for the newest shit that was cool, you know, just the same way Kanye West or whatever today, or, you know, and so that whole weird rock mentality of like, you know, vintage this and vintage that, I'm just, you know, that's a tangent, but I feel that same way with the industry, you know.
Yeah.
I'm all for, you know, just being able to get closer to that source, you know, direct communication, is what it's about to me, you know, and not like, oh, if I could have been on Atlantic Records in 1972, that would have been super cool. You know, it's like, whatever, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I almost worry about the people or the companies that are so caught up in the way that we used to do things. Because you think about
dinosaurs.
Blockbuster, for example, right?
They're still thriving in Eugene, Oregon, though.
Oh, they are. Okay. Well,
there's one left.
Never mind.
No, there's one left. I think it's in Eugene, Oregon, but yeah, Blockbuster definitely.
Well, my point is, like, when Blockbuster was big, way before Netflix, I don't think anyone saw Netflix coming or anything like that coming, right? And Blockbuster could have built something online and built, you know, a streaming service, but they didn't. They just kept doing what they were doing, renting, you know, VHS, DVDs, whatever, and didn't embrace the internet and build that thing. And now they basically failed, except in Eugene, Oregon, apparently. So
thriving.
So they're thriving. You know, silver lining, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the truth. I mean, there's no other choice. Like, you got to go with the current, or you're going to get, you know, swallowed up. So, I mean, yeah, I'm definitely on team, like, putting more control into artists' hands, and, you know, so, yeah, we'll see where that all goes. I mean, I already feel like record labels are obsolete. I mean, what they have to offer, you know, of course, is putting money behind marketing and promotion and all that stuff, you know, but
even then you can, you know, promote yourself on Instagram or Twitter.
Right.
YouTube.
Right. Yeah. There's so many ways now, and I love that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens once this You Do You podcast goes live. Look out, world.
Oh my God.
Of course, there's an endless amount of different angles you can do and stuff, but I feel like we've probably talked for like 2 hours now or something. So,
oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
That might be enough. I don't know.
Do you feel like we covered enough sort of Dolour stuff, your album stuff? Like, is there anything else you'd want to plug?
I mean, as I've realized as we've been talking, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I feel like the tough thing with interview thing, I guess, like for me, the things that are interesting aren't always the most like clickbaity or like I don't know. I guess it's like maybe they aren't interesting to other people. I'm not sure, but
it doesn't matter.
Right. But one thing that I did kind of want to share, and it's like I don't even know exactly how to talk about it, but it's like with creative things or with songs or with whatever, it's like they're kind of the stuff that we don't have words for. They're kind of like they exist in this sort of mysterious. But one thing that I thought was really interesting about making this new record was kind of like subconsciously or whatever, like I was feeling like the songs, it was like almost a dialogue with me, and like kind of the way I talked about like 24-year-old Shane coming to me and producing, but it was like almost like this dialogue with my song muse or something like that. Like, and I started just seeing this theme that I know I wasn't writing that at the time when the songs were started, but kind of as I was fine tuning them, it almost felt like this, I don't know, like love letter or like whatever, just like, it was like the character more often than not that I was talking to in the songs was like, my love affair with my music and with my muse or whatever. So it's like songs, it's like, sometimes it's just a stray line in a song or something like that. But like The Gambler, for instance, like is sort of seems to be talking about the way I carved my life out to follow this path, and even though you can listen to it as like a love song or whatever, like it's kind of more about, I've kind of always felt like a monk for music, sort of making a lot of decisions to live really below my means, but like to be able to pursue what I want to pursue and pursue it the way I want without sort of following some status quo thing or whatever, and You and Me, the last song on the record too, feels like it's sort of like a song to that muse or whatever, or that life of, a life, the artist's life or whatever, right. I guess is kind of a theme through the record that I didn't really anticipate, going into it. But so that was something that I feel like just connecting with that sort of thing through making the record kind of made me feel like I was on the right path. It was like, okay, like this is like the muse has led me back down through this, world that I kind of didn't think existed for me anymore, So I guess that's something that, yeah, it's hard to articulate, but almost every song has something in it that kind of made me think of it more that way. Even just like the Snake Eye, I was your love, but I broke your heart. I'm coming back. Let's restart. Sort of feels almost more like, to me, at least when I was singing it, like addressing that, elephant in the room of like this project that I had, completely ghosted on, years ago. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's an interesting way to look at the record or listen to the record, but obviously people can listen to it however they want to, but that was something that kind of caught me off guard when I was making it.
That is so cool. It's very deep. It sort of reminds me of, in Zen Buddhism, there's this idea of the water course way. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before, but basically that water on its path will just settle down into, like the lowest part. It's not resisting. It's just
right. Going with the flow.
Yeah. And it's sort of this idea of, I guess, and maybe this is just me being optimistic, but when you sort of follow your flow and just where you're feeling,
led,
just like you're feeling
compelled
towards, compelled. Yeah. Then everything just kind of works. It just works out.
That's how it felt. And I guess like kind of, that was the clue that I was kind of on the right path, like sort of getting that, picking up on that kind of throughout the process. Again, it wasn't like a conscious, like, let's write it so that's all these little things in there, but they kept popping up as I was working on the record. And it was like, okay, this is like a message that was for me that I needed to kind of hear or like connect to or understand, to sort of get me to the next place. So that's cool. Yeah. It definitely, there was something in there that did feel like a Zen Buddhist kind of thing. I didn't, know exactly what it all meant, but I always try to just follow my instincts or, what feels right, but sometimes you get those little clues or those little reminders along the way. So, yeah.
And that, to tie back to my podcast is sort of the idea behind it of, you do you. I want people to just,
right.
Not feel like, well, at least, I'm not, there's no judgment here. You're in a safe space and, you should do you.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I couldn't think of a better place to talk about the Royal We for the first time in this safe house of you do you.
Yeah.
All right, Birdie.
Cool. I don't know. Should I have some sort of, like
wrap up thing?
Yeah.
Namaste.
What do people usually do? Or what do you guys do on the Elvis show?
We usually talk about what the next episode's going to be. And then we're like, tell people where to find us on social media, or like, if they want to email in, here's our email address. And then we end with, thank you very much. So
nice. Yeah. I need something like that.
Yeah. So remember, kids, you do you.
It's a possibility.